So it's the early hours of the morning, the 17th of August. Both the BBC and CNN are leading on the congressional race in Wyoming. Now, usually this wouldn't be world news. Wyoming's one of the least populated states. It's a pretty Republican state. Um, but I think this is being seen as a sort of bellwether for just how deep uh, Trumpism still pervades in the Republican Party. Uh, the other big story, actually, on the BBC at least, was about another election, the Kenyan presidential election. Raila Odinga, who's a perennial candidate, saying that he's won. The election commission's divided. William Ruto has been named the new president, but I hope there's no repeat of the violence that went on in 2007, 2008 in Kenya. But on Wyoming and what's happening there, the results are coming through, and as expected, um, Harriet Hagman, who's Trump's preferred candidate, is winning. And I don't think the Liz Cheney campaign is going to be surprised by that. I don't think they expect to win. Um, it's a very, very strange situation that America is in when you have former Vice President Dick Cheney, who during the Bush years was really a hate figure for the left, and he's still pretty controversial. That he is actually now on the same camp as left wing critics of Trump. Um, Apparently, those who've been campaigning for Liz Cheney have some of them have come from out of state, from Texas. There's even been socialists advocating for her, which is incredible. I mean, she's a Republican, and she, as from what I gather, is a pretty consistent conservative on many issues, but she's a staunch critic of Trump. When Obama was elected back in '08, there was a little bit of a personality cult. There was a little bit of a messiah-like thing going on back then. But I honestly don't think it was ever taken very seriously by Obama supporters. I think there was real enthusiasm. I think they wanted him to win. Um, and there perhaps was a little bit naivety that he would deliver everything. Obama, I think, was an above average president. Not quite on par, well, not even close to par with Roosevelt, Washington, Lincoln, but above average. There's the results, I'll just show you. Too close to call. But I think it's obvious Harry Hagman's going to get this. Yeah, so what I was saying was Obama, I think, is generally considered an above average president. But there will be some who said he was disappointing. He could have done more in this area or that area. The thing with Obama was I don't think there was a comparable personality cult. Enthusiasm, yes. A sense of history, yes. Because at the time I remember conservatives mocking that and saying it was a kind of personality cult, but I don't think there's anything like what we're seeing with Donald Trump, basically in American history, not on this scale. Um, and it's very troubling because the fact of the matter is there are millions of people out there. Alaska's also holding a race tonight. I'll just quickly hold this up. Um, Millions of people are convinced that the election was stolen. They're convinced Donald Trump's still president. They're convinced that everyone who disagrees with them is part of the deep state. And I think it's this juxtaposition of a personality cult with unhinged conspiracy theories. I've seen some of these online, and it's quite troubling stuff. I mean, there's just no, I don't know, it's concerning. I mean, people might say that the January 6th thing has been overblown by the left, by Democrats, by moderate Republicans. But I think that it's symbolic of a bigger problem. Okay, five people died that day. It's not 9/11, and I think when the left compare it to that, it's absurd. Obviously, it's not. But nevertheless, it was a very serious incident. It wasn't just a riot. I think it was an insurrection. And I think it was absolutely, unquestionably motivated by Trump. I think the man is a narcissist. I think he is an unhinged character. I think he's a threat to democracy. Whatever he achieved in his presidency, I think is overshadowed by his absolute contempt for democracy, his failure to fully concede defeat. He did eventually, but through gritted teeth. Well, no, he didn't really eventually. I think to this day, Donald Trump hasn't really accepted that he lost. Even if you allow for some discrepancies, the scale of the popular vote that Biden got was such that it's just implausible that there would be election fraud on that scale. And every single court case that was brought was thrown out. Um, I remember the scenes on election night. I think it was in Phoenix or Las Vegas. It was one of those cities in the south west, and there were armed Republicans actually outside a polling station, basically intimidating um, the counters, election staff. I think there is something very dangerous and unhinged about some of these Trump cultists because they believe that Trump is akin to I don't know what, um, but they're so the mindset is so deeply entrenched that it's almost not even the left that they have an issue with. It's moderate Republicans or Republicans who respect democracy. I mean, when you get figures like the late John McCain, members of the Bush family, these senior Republican figures who, Mike Pence even, and I won't give Pence too much credit because let's not forget he was a loyalist to the corrupt Trump administration right up to the 11th hour. Um, but there is something very, very, very rotten at the heart of Trumpism. And Britain has its Trump apologists. Nigel Farage, it's basically Trump's yes man. Let's not forget that. It's pathetic how he grovels to Trumpism. I think Farage sort of looks up to Trumpian power, uh, something in that which is kind of a bit sick. Um, but I think there's real implications for this because it's almost certain that Trump will try and run again in 2024. Now, if he loses again, and let's not forget, Trump lost the popular vote even when he became president. He lost the popular vote in 2016. He won by the Electoral College vote. He lost both the popular vote and the Electoral College vote in 2020. Um, so he's a sore loser, but he's going to run again. And if he loses again, which is a possibility now, Biden, even with this big climate change bill that he's just brought in, Biden's a struggling president. I think there are a lot of Democrats who are uneasy about Biden's polling, and one gets a feeling that he's another Jimmy Carter, i.e., a one-term president. Um, but it may well be that many people will vote for Biden out of fear of Trump getting back in again, which is understandable. But I think if Trump loses again, I think that anger could boil over. You get these militia groups, you get these unhinged conspiracy nuts, oath keepers, and QAnon, and the rest of them. And I think they're capable of violence. I think that they are determined that righteousness is on their side. Some of them even bring religion into it perversely, as if Donald Trump is a great personification of what a good Christian should be. Um, there's just something very, very rotten about Trumpism. And you don't need to be a lefty to see it. I mean, I've been very vocal about what I think of the woke left, and I do think the Democratic Party has a big problem with that. Yeah, they do, and I think Biden and Harris have pandered to it. Um, but I don't know if they have the same shackleholds on the Democrats as Trumpism has on the Republicans, because what we're seeing right now is moderate Republicans like Liz Cheney, I should say, Mitt Romney, Mike Pence. Well, Pence is pretty hardline conservative. That's the crazy thing. Even a hardline conservative, and Mike Pence is hardly. I mean, the idea of a Pence presidency, for example, would terrify, understandably, the LGBT community. But all these figures who are, grandiose, big establishment names in the Republican Party are now hit figures. It's almost become a one-man party. It's become like it is a personality cult. It's almost, dare I say it, like the way Mao in China, in the Cultural Revolution, he sought to destroy the Communist Party establishment, all for egotistical reasons. But in doing so, he totally turned China upside down. Now, I'm not saying it's the same situation because America hasn't seen those levels of violence. I mean, thousands of people were killed in the Cultural Revolution, driven to suicide, savagely murdered. It hasn't got to that point in America. I do feel American politics right now is extremely volatile. And I think that Trump is a flamethrower. I think this man is dangerous. I really do. Um, even if Trump doesn't succeed, there are Trumpians who want to follow in his footsteps. Ron DeSantis, others, there's younger Trumpian type figures who will, you know, push Trumpism into the future. I really think America is in a bad way right now, and this is a problem because if the United States of America, as the world's most powerful country, um, as the supposedly the leader of the free world, if this situation continues, if these culture wars continue to toxify, I don't know what's going to happen. I do think the left are partly to blame for the rise of Trumpism in their arrogance. I mean, the way CNN has covered controversial issues like race, the extreme bias they've shown, I don't think it's helped. If you're telling someone who's struggling with poverty in, say, West Virginia or Arkansas that they have the white privilege, and that person is perhaps tapping in to shady internet sites, which is theorizing about the deep state, it makes total sense that they would then gravitate to Trumpism. So I do think the left is partly to blame for this. Um, but everyone's responsible for their own actions. And if someone, feels that their Second Amendment rights give them a green light to storm into a state building or a federal building armed and demand the public execution of elected politicians, I mean, America's going to end up looking like a failed state. Really, I think it's. I think even in the late '60s, when all the unrest was going on against the Vietnam War and the urban violence and the racial tensions, that was very bad. But I'm not sure if it penetrated to the highest levels in the same way. Now, Nixon, of course, was corrupt. There's no question about that. But even Richard Nixon, I don't think he was a flamethrower in the way Trump is. Nixon was an egoist. He was a very shady character, extremely corrupt, very morally dubious, of course. And I'm not downplaying Nixon's legacy, but he at least had a veneer of statesmanship. And Nixon didn't go out and rile up his reporters to riot and to attack the Capitol building. I mean, this is unparalleled in modern times, and Trump has plenty of apologists on this side of the Atlantic as well. It's a bit like support for Putin in some ways because people who hate the woke left, some of them seem to think that Trump and Putin are the answers. So this strange mentality that you combat the excesses of leftism with these sort of far right conspiracy theories, and I don't know, it's depressing and it's concerning. Just looking at the latest results, Hagman's well ahead. Liz Cheney, I mean, they're speculating that she might run for president. I mean, she won't win, she won't get the nomination, but I think the idea is that it would kind of upset the Trump vote. But the problem is, whatever Republicans do, whatever moderate Republicans do, will be seen as part of the deep state. It will be seen as, unless they slavishly get behind Trump, then they're the enemy. So they have to tread a careful line because it's um it's like they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. Well, what I mean by that is, of course, if they have integrity and political courage, they won't support this dangerous narcissist, this undemocratic demagogue. Um, but then, they lose the seats. Then where does the influence go? There's all sorts of questions about this, but I love Trumpism, and I would urge anyone, any thinking person, if you are kind of gravitating to Trumpism because you dislike the woke left and you dislike the excesses of the left, whether it be their action to crime, whether it be their divisive views on race, whatever it may be, Trump is not the answer. Why? Because he has contempt for democracy. If you respect democracy, how can you support Trump? Because all the claims made about the election being stolen have been debunked. Are you going to say that every single court that threw those claims out were all in with Biden? Really? I mean, what sort of dystopian image are you having if you really, really believe the sort of theories that Alex Jones and QAnon and so on are putting out there? It's just think rationally, get back down to earth. Anyway, um, finally, why do I, as a British citizen, why am I pontificating on this? Why am I voicing my views on this? Because I think the direction America goes in really, really matters. Because if America loses direction, and say Russia or China somehow fills that vacuum and they get to the top of leadership in this world, look at the record. I mean, that would be a profoundly, they're projecting Hagman's defeated Cheney. It's not surprising. Yeah. I mean, the number of these Republicans who are denying the election results is perverse. Anyway, I'm going to watch this. I'll round this up.